This guy is probably one of our most outspoken, I would even say angriest. I can name 100 different problems that I think are more important. Why constitutional reform? We got so many problems. Flood control.
The flooding problem was caused by everybody from all around the country moving into Metro Manila because all the jobs were there.
Oversupplies of condos.
There's no other thing that could really solve that unless we find ways to depopulate these deep root cause systemic problems. The only way to fix them is to fix the systems that govern the way Philippine society actually works.
What does Orion Perez Dumdum think the reason is? Is it personal pride? What do you think that blockage is? That's like you've exported your human resources, your human capital. You're literally willing to give them to another country. It's hypocrisy, isn't it?
It's hypocrisy. It's actually, I hate to use the word, but it's stupid. Countries that use parliamentary systems are less prone to corruption than countries that use presidential systems.
For the reason being
that there are more eyes watching. Flood control thing.
Yeah.
Well, we need to look at the financing behind it. So from the opposition, you can basically look at, wait a minute, I Googled how much it's supposed to cost. Why is this 30 times the cost? That's how these guys think. We don't think that way. Our policymakers in the Philippines are so baryotic. If we have federalism, it will cost more taxes, higher taxes than the normal. No, not true. The 1987 Constitution is his mother's legacy, right? So we don't want to offend him. There's so many of us now, and what, we're just going to be held back. But when all these reforms happen, it'll be better for them as well. There'll be more people with money buying their goods and services. People need to learn about these things that they probably don't understand.
I can understand now why you're so angry. I feel like I want to yell at the camera too. Hi guys, welcome to a special PGMN podcast. I'm James Deakin. Today I'm with Orion Perez Dumdum. Now this guy is probably one of our most outspoken, I would even say angriest anchors here at PGMN. He has good reason to be angry, but we're doing a special deep dive today into the correct movement, which is basically your movement about constitutional reform. We'll get into that, I promise. But for now, I just want to start off, Orion, by asking, we got so many problems. I mean, we got flood control, we got oversupplies of condos. I can name 100 different problems that I think are more important. Why constitutional reform? Can we start with that?
That's a great question, James. I mean, honestly, all these little problems that we're having, traffic, the flooding issues, condo oversupply, these are all symptoms of really, really deep-seated root cause problems that are causing all these symptoms to emerge. And these deep root cause systemic problems, the only way to fix them is to fix the systems that govern the way Philippine society actually works. And what's the root of the kinds of systems we have? It's the Constitution. The systems we have are actually defined by the Constitution. So if we have a faulty Constitution with faulty systems that are running the show, we actually end up having all these little problems coming out. For example, if we talk about traffic, and I'm pretty sure that's one of your favorite.
I wouldn't call it a passion, but I know where you're going.
It's a major pet.
It's a major part of my life. Yeah,
indeed, of our lives in the Philippines.
My advocacy. Yeah,
that's actually all caused by the fact that everyone is practically in Metro Manila.
Correct.
Right. And what caused everybody to flock into Metro Manila? It's our overly centralized unitary structure of territorial administration. The way things were set up in the Philippines, we don't have a decentralized means of economic development. We don't have incentive schemes that would actually cause the different regions to develop themselves the way they normally would in other societies, such that by default, everything just happens to be in Metro Manila. And as a result of that, people decide, okay, let's flock there because that's where the jobs are.
Yeah.
Right. And because everybody's now here, we've got the overpopulation problem, overpollution problem, congestion, traffic, too many vehicles. And so there's no other thing that could really solve that unless we find ways to depopulate Metro Manila by getting the other regions to develop so that people can go back to their hometowns. And all these other things like condo oversupply, for example.
That's personal to me. Yeah.
Condo oversupply you think about it, early 2000s,
Mhm.
a lot of these condos were coming out, right?
Mhm.
And then you find that you look at these condos, they're already finished. They've been there for like a year or two. They're actually all owned. But you look at night, you see these condos and there are hardly any lights because no one lives in them. Who actually owns these places? Who owns these units? Usually OFWs.
Mhm.
Because the OFWs are the only ones who can really afford these condos, right? And these OFWs probably think of originally, I'm going to get my family to stay there or something like that. But then they later say, let me try to rent it out. But they can't rent it out because the people in the Philippines who are working, every day, 9 to 5 jobs, their salaries are not enough for them to be able to afford the rent. That would, that would be enough to maintain the condos and all that stuff. So there's so many little problems here and there
Mhm.
that are actually traceable to the systemic issues that we have because we have lousy systems in place.
I
And
hear you.
these are
I hear exactly what you're saying because there's so many parallels that we can draw to my line of thinking. I think what you're basically saying is, well, the root cause being the Constitution. It needs reform. It's like trying to fix your weight problem by just making more holes in the belt, right?
yeah.
So yes, and I feel that about traffic too. That's building more roads. It's the same thing, adding more holes to the belt. This volume's got to descend somewhere, right? So
Exactly.
even if you put the roads on top of each other, they'll still have to descend somewhere, and that we can't anymore. So we need to talk about what's causing that. And I think you use the word depopulation, perhaps maybe a softer term is decentralization.
Yeah.
So, but I agree with that. Having said that, and I also agree with the what you said about the base layer of the Constitution being the problem, because I feel the same way about money. We won't get into that today, but I just want to draw the parallel that you fix the money, you fix the world. So there's no point discussing all of this when the money is all fake and corrupt and all that.
Exactly.
So you're talking about the Constitution the same way I talked about sound money. What exactly is the correct movement, and how is this going to change it?
Okay, so the correct movement, correct actually stands for constitutional reform and rectification for economic competitiveness and
I thought that
transformation.
was clever, by the way.
Thanks,
But
man.
yeah, it was like when you explained it like that, I thought, "Ooh, that's a perfect little acronym." Go ahead.
Because I mean, I wanted to make sure that people, when they look at what it is we stand for, which is constitutional reform, there's a reason for it. We're not just we'll change it for the sake of changing it. No, we're changing it for the sake of making the country more economically competitive, and in order to transform the country for the better. Because the problem is, for the longest time, charter change, which is actually an only in the Philippines kind of terminology, charter change, which is
Cha-cha.
better cha-cha, right? They've demonized it. A lot of the times it has been demonized. But the correct term, really, the international term, you watch all these international news channels and all that, you'll never hear them say charter change. You'll hear them say
Constitution
constitutional reform.
or amendments, is that fall into the same thing?
Constitutional reform just at least is a broad term for making changes to the Constitution.
Mhm.
And I thought it's necessary for us to sort of educate people on why it's necessary.
Yes. Why is it necessary?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
Right? Because I mean, it's for the longest time, a lot of Filipinos have been brainwashed to think that changing the Constitution is so that you will have term extensions.
Okay, let's use a real world example that they can relate to. For example, foreign ownership is a huge part of what you talk about.
Yes.
FDI, foreign
Yes.
direct investment. I'll push back a little. I'll play the devil's advocate.
Sure.
And I'm not trying to challenge you because I know a fraction of what you know, probably 1% of what you know. I just want to play the devil's advocate so that I can learn. I really want to learn what you're trying to do here. 40% is the current FDI, right? So they can only own a maximum of 40% of a business here. Some might make the argument, especially if you're talking about buying land and stuff like that. Aren't they going to price the Filipino out? Aren't some countries like Australia complaining about the Chinese coming in and buying all their land, and now the locals can't buy their own land? What do you do to prevent that?
What we in the correct movement are actually talking about when we say, number one, economic liberalization, which is to remove all the anti-foreign investment restrictions that are found in the Constitution. What you want to do is to say, we'll take them out of the Constitution, but we can still have restrictions and regulations in legislation and in policy.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't need to be in the Constitution. In fact, I think that's the biggest problem of the Philippines. We are the only country that has done this weird and crazy thing of putting all these anti-foreign investment restrictions in the Constitution. Nobody else does that, right? And the reason for that, the reason why I say it's crazy is the Constitution is something you can't change. You cannot tweak so easily. But if you put into law instead these little restrictions, you can fine tune it when you need to. So, for example, if we say, all right, we're no longer going to make a ban on foreigners owning land, for example, we can then have laws that say, wait a minute,
Okay, yeah.
we're not going to allow just any foreigner to own land. We're going to say, well, first of all, are you a foreigner who owns a business that creates jobs for Filipinos? We could have a law like that. And then we say, now, if you create enough jobs, for example, well, hey, you're in the welcomed group.
Okay.
We can always have something like that.
I get it. So not to interrupt you, I'm absorbing, and I'm trying to put into things that I understand. Like, for example, the marijuana law, which is controversial. It's not that you want to put that in the Constitution that marijuana is okay and good for you. No, it's just you decriminalize it. You take it out of that frame or lens that it's criminal and all this, and then you have regulations around, like, okay, is it for medicinal purposes, is it for this purpose?
Indeed.
That's how you manage it, rather than what we have. You're saying is in the Constitution it says bawal ang mga puti, ganun?
Yeah. We have
Basically,
something like that.
our version of it says bawal, basta bawal, because we're threatened by them, that they will take over our economic stability. Is that
I think, so there was this
where do you think the good intention was, if you were to give them credit for
so long ago? There was this thing called the Filipino First movement that was coming out. It was, economic protectionism. It came from, I would say, they had all these so-called good intentions, right? They wanted to say, well, we want to make sure that ordinary Filipinos are protected, so that we Filipinos own most of the means of production, et cetera, and the land.
So we'll rig the game.
Yeah. Right? But then there are all these unintended consequences, which is that by doing so, you've actually made it harder for companies to easily come in and create jobs. Because the end result was that by preventing foreign investors from easily coming in, you're basically saying, okay, only Filipino investors, only Filipino businessmen should be able to really dominate the scene. Problem is, wait a minute, there are not that many of them.
Yeah.
There are not that many Filipino businessmen able to create so many jobs for our millions of Filipino job seekers. So what to do, Singapore had this issue as well before. So Lee Kuan Yew, for example, he basically, in his memoirs, I think it was the book From Third World to First, he basically said, we had that problem before as well, where we wanted to essentially develop our economy ourselves, but the problem was we didn't have
enough.
We didn't have enough businessmen.
Yes.
Right? And most of these businessmen were usually into setting up bazaars, malls, buy and sell. None of them were interested in industrialization, setting up factories.
Local economy versus national type of,
Exactly. So but what we needed in order to create so many jobs was to have industrialization. How do we do this? Well, it turns out there was this low-hanging fruit, which is, let's bring in these foreign companies. They come in, they set up the companies, they set up the factories, they set up the offices, and they hire local people and train them. And in fact, when they pay wages, the wages even tend to be better than what the prevailing rate is by local companies. So a local company, a local Singapore company would pay this much. A foreign multinational, they would come in and they would pay a little higher or better. And the training methodologies, everything that they give, it's based on global standards. People learned all these international ways of thinking, of how to do business and all that stuff. They learned.
I think what I'm hearing is like, and to put it into analogy, I think a lot of people understand is, try doing this with your kids, right? You have 3 or 4 kids, right? Try doing the protectionism strategy with them and solving all the problems and insulating them with little, you're flicking all the levers to rig the game, in other words.
Yeah.
And then your kid has to go into the real world It won't gel. Now you think you're helping your kid because you're protecting them,
You're
right?
sheltering them so
Yes,
much, right?
you're rigging the game for them. You're like, okay, it's a big bad world out there, so you're rigging it. Yeah, but at some point they're going to have to compete on that free market, and they won't. They can't. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Like the Philippines,
Yes.
we're treating them like kids. A protectionism. Let's just give them the credit that it was born from a good idea and good intention. Filipino first, but we're cutting our nose to spite our face.
That's one thing I was going to say, actually,
Okay.
and you beat me to it.
All right.
That's
so
right.
you know, some people might say, okay, but wait, China has a pretty interesting model. They don't let any of the foreigners, like if you want to do a venture in China, you got to go 50-50 with the government, or it's the government
Well,
take.
actually, when they started, so
Yeah. How does
so
that work?
that's actually more recent, this kind of thing. But originally in 1979,
Mhm.
so here let's track back. What happened to China was that at that point in time, in 1978, the leader of China, Deng Xiaoping, he's the guy who took over Mao Zedong when Mao Zedong died.
Mhm.
Right. And Mao Zedong was very much, let's close everything
Yes,
off,
yes.
it's communism, blah, blah, blah. And Deng Xiaoping it clearly didn't work.
They were
Millions
coming-
of people died.
They were coming from the century of humiliation, was it?
No, it's not. That's
It's
not the
his
one.
previous, okay.
What they came from was they had, number one, so many years of the Cultural Revolution
Yes.
under Mao. And then before that, they came from the Great Leap Forward.
Okay.
And the Great Leap Forward was a disaster, is an absolute economic disaster. Millions of people died in China because of starvation and famine. And this was induced by the wrong policies, communistic policies that unfortunately didn't work, And so coming from those years of problematic economic performance, Deng Xiaoping decided, we got to change strategy. And what happened was, luckily, in November of 1978, he was doing a tour of Southeast Asia. He was basically doing state visits to other countries. And one of the countries he visited was Singapore. And he was so impressed when he came to Singapore. He saw, oh my God, this place, I was told that this is a place that's, neo-colonialist and they're oppressed and all that stuff. But wait a minute, it's thriving. They're doing really great stuff. And he asked Lee Kuan Yew, what did you guys do to end up with this really, well-functioning economy? Lee Kuan Yew told Deng Xiaoping, well, what we did was we brought in foreign investors. We invited them to come in, create jobs, set up offices, set up factories, hire our people, train our people. We'll make things easy for you. Just come in and create jobs for our people. Deng Xiaoping said, well, I'm sick and tired of the way things were, where we let ideology dictate everything,
Mhm.
and it didn't work. So let's try this out. And that's why he decided to set up Shenzhen. So Shenzhen is right across Hong Kong.
Mhm.
And he said, we're going to turn this into a showcase of how the rest of China probably should be. So he said, okay, we're setting this place up just across Hong Kong. He started off by inviting Hong Kong businessmen to come over. And he said, hey guys, come over, set up your factories here.
That was
It's
the
cheaper.
beginning.
That was the beginning.
Okay.
100%. You can own your company 100%.
Hey, I'm coming in late. I'm coming in.
That's
So
okay,
the
man.
90s and the automotive industry. So
Yeah.
keep going.
When they started off, they were very open. Hey, come on. So they started off with, number one, Hong Kong businessmen. Okay, Hong Kong businessmen, come over. You guys are Cantonese, just like the guys in Shenzhen, because most of them were also Cantonese. It was also in the same area. Just come in, set up your factories. We're going to be the rent is probably going to be a fraction of the price. And the salaries you're going to have to pay are also going to be a fraction of the price that you have to pay people in Hong Kong. And so there was a flocking of all these businessmen setting up factories in Hong Kong, garment factories, toy factories, whatever. And then later on, Deng Xiaoping said, okay, now let's shift, not just the Hong Kong people, Hong Kong businessmen, let's bring in other ethnic Chinese businessmen from
So
other
you had a gradual approach.
gradually.
Yeah.
Let's try it out, because I'm not sure.
Westerners might be the enemy.
Yeah.
But we'll start low.
We'll start
slow. Okay.
start slow. So he brought in, Jack and Jill came in, Oishi, the Filipino companies,
Yeah.
Filipino Chinese companies went in there. By the way, Oishi right now is like the they call it 上好家 in China, and it's the favorite brand of Chinese in terms of junk food.
Is that Liwaiwai?
Liwaiwai, yeah,
Liwaiwai.
Liwaiwai. So Oishi is very famous there. They all call it 上好家, and yeah, it's one of those companies that came in early on.
And I don't even know if it's a fair comparison because China is their domestic, the size of their domestic market. It's not like quite like the Filipino market, so they can play by different rules. But there's still a blueprint that we can learn from there.
Yeah.
So with Shenzhen, like you're painting this picture now of, so it's toe in the water type of
Yes.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And then they're saying, okay, wait, we're learning exponentially because these are new skills that our people are not, we don't have.
We didn't have before.
We didn't have, so we're now learning from each other. We're opening our market because they need, the other side, of course, needs incentive.
Exactly.
We're not doing this just for the sake of singing kumbaya around the fireplace.
Yeah.
No, so you're painting this picture for me that's how they started. And then where did it go from then? When did they bring in the Westerners?
So right after they saw that bringing in foreign but ethnic Chinese businessmen in was working, they then decided, okay, let's try bringing in all these foreign companies now, because those ethnic guys, those ethnic Chinese, those ethnic overseas Chinese guys, they're foreigners themselves. It's working. Let's try bringing in all these other companies. So these American companies, these Japanese companies, and all that stuff. Let's bring them in, and that's where all these like really major tech companies started coming in. You started having companies like IBM, HP, et cetera, and so forth. Later on, Apple. They came in, and obviously they had to hire people and they had to train them, right? And all these engineers, these supervisors, these managers who were trained, they became so good at it that eventually some of them made their own companies.
Do you mean the Chinese? The
Chinese
made their own spin-off company.
They made their own spin-off companies based on knowledge that they learned, and this is not unique. I mean, I'm going to basically say that even a company like SAP, for example, was something like that, because SAP was founded by several German software engineers who were originally working for IBM. So IBM it's an American company, and they had this subsidiary in Germany where they had several software engineers working on something. I mean, obviously IBM trained these people, right? And then they decided to come up with enterprise resource planning software, and then somehow it didn't. They maybe some of the things that they wanted to do within IBM didn't pan out. They decided to make their own company, and that became SAP. So SAP is the German company, yeah, but the people who are working there, the people who are working.
It sounds strange when you go from the pronouncing the Chinese names to the German accent. It's throwing me off here, like, whoa. Also, we want to put this into real term world benefits for a lot of maybe listeners out here. They may not be into the whole economics thing, but what interests me and fascinates me is how you think the impact culturally will be, and the day-to-day benefits that we're going to get. How did China benefit from this, and how do you see the Philippines changing some of these problems that we see on the road through this economic reform or constitutional reform?
Yeah, so China basically, by opening up to foreign investors, particularly in the early years, they were able to create a lot of jobs which were not there prior to that, right?
Which pulled them from poverty to middle class.
Indeed.
Gave them even mobility. Like they were on bicycles how many years ago? It was 50 years ago?
40, 50 years ago.
40, 50 years ago, they're almost all on bicycles. And now
all wearing Mao jackets and all that.
Wow.
Stuff.
And
now, no, they're all wearing
the largest consumer car market in the world.
Indeed.
Yes, it's crazy that the technology there that you're crediting towards opening up
the openness. Yeah.
So you're making the argument that China would not, had China adopted the same constitutional thinking as we do here, if they had just followed the same template that we do now, they would be nowhere near
the superpower status that they have right now.
Yeah,
they wouldn't be able to get there.
Because there's this saying, no man's an island. Okay, that's a bad example for the Philippines because we technically are an archipelago, but you know what I mean. But we are trying to act like an island. We're going to always have island mentality and never outgrow this little bubble that we're in.
The bariotic.
Yes.
way of thinking.
So we need to court foreign investors to come in. We need to give them incentivize it, because you make a very good point, which I think everyone understands about FDI is like, okay, we're scared about the foreigners running our economy, but why else would they come in if they can't control their own capital and make
Indeed,
decisions on it? Is
indeed.
one of the points you make.
I mean, I myself, I'm a longtime former OFW. I was working in Singapore for so many years, and then it was obvious to me that number one, Filipinos don't really care about the employers that they work for. Like, we don't care. What I mean to say is, we don't care that, oh, I'm working for an American company. It should have been a Filipino company. We don't care. We just care that
This company will survive and pay
that
me,
this
and
company is going to pay us,
and there's a yeah.
indeed, that we have a career.
path, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we care about. So that's the reason why so many Filipinos become OFWs working abroad for foreign employers, because there are no employers.
Opportunities here.
Opportunities here are so small, so few, and if ever they do pay wages, they pay very low wages. Right?
And then they're all centralized in Imperial Manila,
all in Imperial
where
Manila. Yeah.
110 or 115 million possible Philippines will all fight for this little piece of the pie, which is so small. So we're trying to make a bigger pie by allowing foreign investors. Well, here's a pushback for you. Don't we already have that? Like, aren't foreigners already allowed to own companies here right now? Like, there are companies out there that are 100% majority
Yes.
foreign owned, like in the recent Public Services Act amendments or the Retail Trade Liberalization Act. Why do we still need to remove the anti-FDI restrictions if we have that?
Okay, then that's a very, very good question. So indeed, we are actually open. We had there was the Foreign Investment Act. I think it was in 1991, if I'm not mistaken, when that came out. So we've done everything to try to bring in foreign investors as well, but we never took away those constitutional restrictions. So basically, the big sign that says we don't want you here, we didn't take that off. So when you compare, say, the Philippines against other countries in ASEAN, because we are the only country that has anti-foreign investment restrictions in the Constitution, whereas they don't, we have a huge sign saying, we don't want you here. We don't want you here. And then we have little fine print that says, but we'll make exceptions. If you fall under this and under that, you can come in.
But the messaging is still...
the big sign says we don't want you here. So most people, like you can only see the fine print when you're near enough.
Yeah.
But when you're from afar, you see the big sign that says we don't want you here. Many people, like maybe 70, 80% of the people who see the big sign won't care to read the fine print anymore, right? So in other countries, it's like the big sign is you're all welcome.
Yeah.
And then there's fine print
that under these conditions.
Under these conditions, if you are in this industry, well, you cannot own this, blah, blah, blah. So,
but you're near enough to see that and make that decision.
Exactly.
You're in the room.
You're in the room. I mean, first of all, when the big sign says you're welcome, then you're enticed to come closer.
Yeah.
And when you come closer, you see the fine print. Oh, I can come in, but I can't go into this. Or I can, but I need to joint venture with this company or whatever. To be absolutely honest, even China doesn't have anti-foreign investment restrictions in their constitution as well.
But it's, in the fine print.
It's in the fine print, yeah. But like, for example, the operations of Apple for many years, that was majority Apple owned and Foxconn and all that stuff, right? They basically allowed all these companies, as long as they were going to be creating jobs, hiring people, training them, just come in. And that's the way we should think.
So what do you personally think? What does Orion Perez Dumdum think the reason is? Is it personal pride? Is it, why don't they lift it? What do you think that blockage is?
I think it's partly, there's a mental block about people thinking that maybe we can't do it. I don't know. Maybe that's the one.
Nobody wants to be that person responsible for proposing this change and being wrong.
Well, there are actually now a lot of people in both houses of Congress, well, mostly in the lower house, who are actually talking about, opening it up. Okay. They're really seriously thinking about it. Let's open up the Constitution.
Can you think of a legitimate, valid argument against it? Against the opening up? I mean, if you were to be you can see your smirk, right? As charitable as you can, could you make an argument on their side?
A lot of them would say, no, but we have to be careful that we don't allow countries that we are in conflict with to be able to have their companies coming into the Philippines, blah, blah, blah. And I said, we can always come up with legislation for that. Why do we need to put these anti-investment restrictions in the Constitution when we can, in fact, just put all these regulatory and other restrictive stuff in legislation instead, where we can tweak it, we can make it more specific, that sort of thing.
If it was just humans, not countries, this would be just systemically racist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because you're basically from the get-go, you are not because of your race or your country. It's not you're welcome until you do something bad. That's how basically other countries are doing.
Exactly.
You are welcome under these conditions. You behave like this, we accept you.
Exactly.
Ours, we're saying no because of the color of your skin, your geographical barriers, whatever the latitude.
We don't want you here.
That's it. Just based on you're not Filipino. That's it.
Exactly. And then that's what's wrong about it, because we're forgetting that, number one, there are millions upon millions of Filipinos who don't have jobs, or that if they do have jobs, they earn very, very low wages. Let's first tackle that issue. Let's fix the unemployment problem instead of like talking about who owns the company. I don't care who owns the company. I was an OFW for more than 20 years. And I love the fact that whenever I worked for all these foreign companies, I learned a lot of new different things, and they paid well, so why not? Just let them come in. And then eventually when we have a lot of people with so many jobs already, so we no longer have tambays and all these people asking for ayuda all the time because everybody now has a job, then we can start thinking about these more highfalutin things about like pride and national patrimony and all that. We'll talk about that later, but let's solve the real issue that affects a lot of ordinary Filipinos first. Unemployment, low wages. Let's fix that first.
Yeah, so that's a huge part of our problem, because I'm sensing the hypocrisy here, where you're Filipino first, right? And you're protecting the Filipino by not allowing these foreign companies in, but you're happily shipping them over to the other side.
Exactly.
That's like you've exported your human resources, your human capital. You're literally willing to give them to another country.
Exactly.
It's hypocrisy, isn't it?
It's hypocrisy. It's actually, I hate to use the word, but it's stupid. It's totally stupid. I mean, so because we don't want the foreign investors who can create jobs to come in, because we put that in the Constitution, we're now forced to send millions of our people abroad.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. And then what happens is, so a lot of OFWs, they end up eventually becoming permanent residents or citizens of other countries. So there's a lot of people who are working abroad. Their point of view is, the Philippines is probably hopeless. When I get back, there's still no jobs for me there anyway. I'm going to save enough money that as much as I can, so that I can eventually bring my whole family to some other country.
Yeah. Wow.
the main
Okay,
thing.
I have a theory about this too, because I've been thinking about this for a while. The OFWs, I have hats off, salute. You are really heroes of our country, but I think you don't need to be the heroes that you are right now, because you shouldn't have to play this role.
Exactly.
Am I still correct? Okay, but it doesn't take away from your sacrifice. I just want to make that clear, that you do provide the lifeblood and lifeline of our country, but it doesn't need to be that way. But the point I wanted to make was, we see a lot of these, like how our country is, it's in shambles in a way. It's because we have a transient way of thinking. Because if you ask somebody, let's say, especially go back 10, 15, 20 years ago in Australia, America, etc., what's the dream? Walk up to a random American and say, what's the dream? It's a quarter-acre block, picket fence, Labrador, golden retriever, car, 2.2 kids, etc. That's what it looked like, right?
Yeah.
It's changed a little bit, but you see where I'm going. Ask anyone, Europe, all this. That's the dream. Ask a Filipino the dream, mag-abroad.
Abroad.
So that means your thinking is, this is transient. You're a renter here. You're renting. You're a lease. You don't have a sense of ownership of your country, because you've already in your mind written it off as, this is a stepping stone to get, because success looks like I've left.
Yeah.
That's what success looks like.
Because success is not available in the Philippines.
Yes.
The normal conventional ways of succeeding in other countries,
Correct.
they're not available in the Philippines.
So what does this do to your thinking? You behave like a renter versus somebody that owns the home. And that is, I think, why we see people, the way they litter, the way the traffic situations, the discipline, because this is temporary in their minds, because success is getting out.
Well, yeah. Look at what happens. A lot of people who, when they graduate from college, for example, they decide they want to work for a company, not to stay there that long. They want to work for a company to earn enough experience that they can use to jump off to another country where they will earn real wages. So here, it's basically when you work for a company here in the Philippines, it's going to be just really, as much as possible, a paid internship. That's what it is. That's what it's supposed to be. It's really an internship, like a practicum or something. It's even worse for those who become nurses, because I mean, and a huge number of people, particularly in the Visayas, Mindanao, and everywhere else, they really want to become nurses, right? So there's too many people going into nursing in the Philippines that when they finish their four-year degree course, they need to get that practicum, right? But because there are not that many hospitals available, the hospitals, what they do is, oh, you want practicum? You have to pay. So you want to do your 2 years of practicum that will allow you to put on your resume that you've had your 2 years of hospital experience. Okay, come work for us, but you pay. So instead of them being paid a salary, they're paying some kind of a practicum fee.
Wow.
That's absurd.
That
right?
is absurd.
It's totally absurd.
Because it breeds exploitation or room for exploitation, precisely because of these problems. My brother runs Lifeline, which is an ambulance service, and part of his company is a academy. So they teach, they train the EMTs. But the problem he has is, he can't keep the EMTs here because they're straight. As soon as they graduate, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, all these places are just grabbing them. So he has to okay, I will put you through this course, etc. But you have to give me at least a year. But he's pulling. That's who he's competing with. All the best of the best are just leaving and leaving and leaving, and we're left with picking up the pieces. I have to just ask you this before we move into, because you talk about federalism and the parliamentary system, and I think that's going to be a fascinating discussion. But we'll just close off with this thing that I keep hearing about, unless otherwise provided by law. What exactly does that mean?
Oh, okay.
That's always in the news.
Yeah, it's always in the news. There are many lawmakers who are talking about, instead of deleting the anti-foreign investment restrictions in the Constitution, they're saying, no, let's just add this clause to those restrictive provisions. And eventually, once we've changed those clauses in the Constitution, we can then set up extra legislation that will now permit these sectors that were hitherto restricted to be opened up to foreign investors. Now, I'm trying to tell all these people, stop thinking about that. That technique of putting in the unless otherwise provided by law clause was something that was hatched during President Noynoy Aquino's term. The reason was, if I don't know if you recall this, but back then there was a clamor among many legislators, Sonny Belmonte, and then even Senate President at that time, Juan Ponce Enrile. Both of them were really trying to push for the deletion of the anti-foreign investment restrictions. And then they noticed there were so many people who said, but we can't easily push that because there's pushback coming from the president himself, because the 1987 Constitution is his mother's legacy, right? So we don't want to offend him. So why not? Gosh. They were thinking, we're going to tiptoe around this.
Oh my God. So 110 million of us and our descendants.
Oh my God. We have to put up with this, right? All because they didn't want to offend the president.
Kasi.
Nakakahiya kasi. May, ma-offend siya.
Oh my God.
So they said, instead of deleting, because if we delete the clauses, it's going to hurt his feelings.
Sorry, I asked.
Right? It's going to hurt his feelings. So they said,
damn, I thought there was something deeper than yun lang pala.
So rather than hurting his feelings by doing, we'll just add a clause, a circumventing clause that says, unless otherwise provided by law.
Oh my God.
And then when we have that, we will later on have the flexibility to set up an enabling law that can circumvent that constitutional restriction. Now, I'm saying, guys, God rest his soul, he's no longer here on earth. Wala na si President Noynoy Aquino. He's no longer around. And his mom. They're no longer around to get offended by deleting these clauses that are really holding us back, let's just delete them. Delete them, erase, obliterate, remove those.
What about Chris, though? I mean, how do we explain it to Chris?
But it's what, 115? I think we're actually 115 or 116
Yeah.
million already or something, not just 110. There's so many of us now, and what, we're just going to be held back
That
because
just blew my mind, Orion. I'm like, I don't know how to feel about it because it's the worst possible reason I could think of was, you know, what you just said.
we don't want to offend them because like, we don't want to offend Noy Noy because you know that's his mom's legacy. So let's just use this.
Yeah.
So it's a very watered down reform proposal. It's still a reform proposal, but it's a very watered down one.
It's like wearing that ugly Christmas sweater every day because your auntie gave it to you, no?
You know, another analogy for that would be, I mean, long ago, there were these racist things, you know, non-whites allowed here, not allowed here. So,
Yeah.
you know, something like that.
US. Are you
in the US, in the US, there were places like, oh, Filipinos not, and dogs not allowed here, something like that. And maybe in Stockton, California, where there were a lot of Filipinos working there. You know, we don't want Filipinos here, something like that. Now, what's going to happen is, oh, no, we're not going to have that sign fully on there anymore. We're just going to cross it out. So you
can still see it.
You can still see the sign, man. That's
what
what
take the sign out. Yeah.
Take the freaking sign out.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Tanggalin mo na. Remove it. Delete it. Diba? Tanggalin mo na. Why is it still there? And you just cross out lang natin. I mean, let's just put a line through it to say that it's no longer in effect. Dude, people can still see it. So it's like saying, we don't want foreigners here. Oh, we just cross it out. But then the foreign companies will still see that.
I can still see you.
I can still see the sign that offends me and makes me feel maybe I'm better off going to Vietnam. Right? And you know, here's the really sad thing about it. The Philippines is usually top of mind among a lot of companies, particularly Western companies, because of our English
speaking. Yeah. And even culturally, we're just easier to get along with.
Exactly. And we're the kinds who, you know, whenever there's a problem, we don't have this idea na, well, wala na ako dyan, that's not my job. You know, no, we try to fix it.
We're pakisama with that. Yeah,
we try to fix a problem and we try to really, you know, see how
and
we
even
fix
globally,
it, right?
when the Filipino leaves the Philippines, they are the most sought after, usually overseas worker for these. So yes, we do have a tremendous reputation worldwide, from our nurses to our seafarers to all of this. One of the easiest to work with.
Exactly.
Not just language, culturally, etc.
Yes,
so yes, you're right. They're compelled naturally to come over and try to do business with us until they realize our politics.
Until they see the sign, because like maybe the first. So here's what.
Yeah, because happens. It belies the optics of the Filipino. We're so welcoming and warm, but yes, you're right. When they get here, there's that sign.
Diba? Here's what usually happens, and I've heard this from some expat friends of mine in Singapore, who were in these kinds of sessions where they were deciding where they would set up their main office or whatever, you know. And the Philippines always turns out to be one of the favorites because they know Filipinos, they love them, they love us, right? And then they say, "Hey guys, come on, let's set up over there in the Philippines, you know, let's set up in the Philippines because they like us, right?" And then, but then the headquarters says, "Oh no, but we can't just say go to the Philippines straight off the bat. We need to canvass, look at other options as well. So, all right, just as a formality, let's look at the other ASEAN neighbors. Okay, we'll check out the Philippines, we'll check out Thailand, we'll check out Malaysia, we'll check out Vietnam and Indonesia and all that stuff, right? So they do a side-by-side comparison. They start off by looking at the constitutions of all the different countries. That's where we get eliminated.
Okay.
Because when they look at the
step one
pa lang tanggal na tayo. Yeah. They look at the constitution of Thailand. They look at the constitution of Malaysia, the constitution of all these other countries. They don't see any anti-foreign investment restrictions. Oh, you need to do this. You need to own only whatever percent. They don't have that in their constitutions. But the Philippines sticks out like a sore thumb as the only country in the region that has that. Yeah. In the constitution. So it's a constitutional round pa lang.
Yeah, game. And that's the opening round.
That's the opening round, and we lost it.
This is not the bonus round or the final buzzer or we're final boss. We're talking
first round. First round. And you know what happens then? because they really want to get Filipinos. They really want to get Filipinos. They usually ask the host country.
It's like the business version ang hirap mahalin. Is that the term?
Yeah.
Ang hirap talagang mahalin.
Hirap talagang mahalin.
There.
But it's like, so but these companies, they still like hiring Filipinos. So they'll ask, say, a country like Vietnam. Maybe Vietnam wins the round, right?
Yeah.
And they'll say, hey,
Can you populate it with Filipinos?
are we allowed to
Oh my gosh.
to hire Filipinos for certain jobs that require their skill set, because they have a huge number of civil engineers or whatever, people trained in this, and because they're good at English and all that stuff, they're perfect for the role. And then these companies will say, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, we'll even allow a visa for their whole families to come over." Vietnam does that.
So our competitors are solving the problems for us.
Exactly.
But to their benefit.
To their benefit, yeah. So when, like, I think it was Intel, I'm not sure. There was it Canon? There was some companies long ago that wanted to come into the Philippines, but then obviously other countries offered better terms, right? And we already had operations of these companies. They just wanted to set up a much bigger regional facility. They ended up setting up, I think it was in Vietnam or something like that. And they really requested the Vietnamese government. But, a lot of our trained managers and chief engineers or, supervisors, they're Filipino. We can't just let them go. We need to bring them over. Is it okay? Vietnam said, sure, no problem. We're going to give visas to their families so that they can come here. And then from the point of view of these companies, these countries, they're saying they're going to pay taxes anyway. Right?
Yeah.
These people, so when these Filipino managers are relocated to Vietnam or whatever, they're going to have to spend there anyway. They're going to earn their wages there. They're going to spend in the economy. They're going to pay taxes anyway. So, yeah, it's still a win-win. And they're going to train their next replacement. So this supervisor, eventually he's also going to want to retire at some point. So he's going to train his successor, who's going to be a Vietnamese person, right? So yeah, fine. What we need is training. So that's how these guys think. We don't think that way. Our policymakers in the Philippines are so patriotic, and I don't know. And our academics, usually a lot of them are so ideologically fixated on Alejandro Lichauco's protectionist mindset and all that stuff. This is a guy from, I think it was the 60s and 70s, who talked about protectionism and all that stuff.
Even immigration, it's very hard to be to become Filipino here, or to even just get permanent residency and stuff. We complain about how difficult it is in other countries. Other countries are easier. I'm speaking from firsthand experience because I was born in this country to a Filipino mother, and I'm having trouble getting my Filipino
this passport. Is so weird, right? Because you are a full Filipino.
According to any other country, I would be. I'm born here to a Filipino mother.
Exactly.
But I was born in the wrong year. I was born in 1972. So I fall under the 35 Constitution, where I could only get it from my father.
Oh my gosh.
So the mother could not hand down citizenship until the 73 Constitution.
Oh no.
So I miss out by a few months only.
They need to fix that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You imagine, when you tell this story to anybody, they're like, come on. In fact, even lawyers that I've spoken to, they'll say, yung mami mo, Pilipina pala yung mami mo, walang problema yan, sir. Sige, go.
Oh my God.
I expect the email in 3, 2, 1. 1972 ka pala, sir. Naku, madugo to. Bakit madugo? Kasi mahirap, kasi kailangan, all the things come out. But basically,
oh my God.
Yeah. So can you imagine the 72, 35 Constitution, only father could hand down the decision. What a slap in the face for the mom. It's like, you are not worthy to hand down your
just because you're a woman.
You're a
woman, right?
Yeah, you cannot hand it down. And in the history of parental disputes, nobody has ever gone to the mother and said, are you sure it's yours? You walk up to a pregnant woman and go, are you sure it's yours? The dad is always in question.
Yeah, the dad's always in question.
But the mom is, my God, you can't get more lineage, a perfect lineage than that. Born to Filipino parents herself, born in this country, Philippines. That lineage goes down.
That's why there's this in the provinces. They have this terminology called tunay na apo, And tunay na apo is usually what a grandmother calls her daughter's children. Ang aking tunay na apo. Because like
the father is,
because you're never sure really if the father, diba?
That's what I mean.
Diba?
There you go.
Because the mother is actually like you're really sure that they came from the mother's womb. Right? And that's a Filipino expression, ang tunay na apo.
Grabe talaga.
And yet, our policies
so I mean,
back then, diba?
It's still, I'm still trying to, I see the problem now. At least I see the problem. What now I'm getting frustrated with in my head sort of is why the why. I still can't figure out the why. What are they trying to logically protect, or is it really just stubbornness?
It's stubbornness. I'd say it's stubbornness and stupidity and ignorance and a fixation on the wrong idiotology. Not even ideology, idiotology.
Idiotology. Put that in your cereal.
Yeah.
That's a new word for it.
It's like back in the 50s and 60s, there was this economic theory that came out of Latin America called dependency school of economics, a dependency theory. And this bunch of Latin American economists came up with this idea that foreign direct investment is basically a form of neocolonialism, blah, blah, blah. And it was very, very politically charged. It was very ideological, not really based on sound understanding of how economics works. It was very, very ideological. And they influenced a lot of third world economists as well. They really caused a lot of world leaders from these third world countries to think of being, protectionist. That's where Lee Kuan Yew deviated. He said, at that point in time, when he was hearing all this from fellow third world leaders, we're going to protect our economies. He said, I don't think we can do that because, and he had a real world problem. So Singapore was a port city of the British, and it was also something like a Subic and Clark of the British. So a huge number of Singaporeans, their jobs were to work for the British bases. And then the British were at some point saying, all right, so Harry, they call Lee Kuan Yew Harry. That's his English name, and that's on his birth certificate. Okay. Actually. Oh, so Harry, we actually need to pull out. It's now the US who's the real power now. We're ceasing to be a blue water navy, so we're gonna have to pull out our bases. And Lee, when you said no, wait, please extend, because when you guys pull out, our people are gonna lose their jobs. So he was able to get them to extend another 2 years, 3 years. He basically said, but if you guys leave, the communists, they had this communist insurgency in Singapore as well. They're going to take over. Come on, please help us out. So they stayed on. And so while that happened, he said, oh gosh, so what am I going to do to create jobs for these guys who are going to lose their jobs when these guys finally pull out? And that's where he got help from the UNDP, United Nations Development Program. This guy named Dr. Albert Venzemius. He was a Dutch economist. And he basically said, why don't you bring in foreign direct investors in droves? Get them to come in, show that your country is very stable, you're very welcoming, and they'll all come in. And that's what he did. So Lee Kuan Yew made foreign companies feel welcome, low taxes, etc. And then he really made it like crime-free as much as possible, right? As much as he could. And that's what really attracted a lot of investors to come in. The fact is, he said, 100% foreign owned, no problem. Please come in. You can own everything. All your profits, you can repatriate, all that stuff. You can just make money, but before anything else, hire our people. Hire and train our people.
So it wasn't even the taxes that was his motivation. It was more the employment
just
and the
create jobs.
Just create jobs. So that's enough. You're saying that's enough.
You
don't have to tax them to oblivion. You don't have to.
You don't need to do that.
That's very short-term thinking.
It's very short-term thinking.
Before we move on to what potentially could be the solution that you're proposing, which is a federalism and a parliamentary system, is there anything else in the constitutional reform that we need to change aside from the FDI? Or is it really centered primarily around FDI?
It's primarily on that. That's the main thing. That's why correct movement stands for constitutional reform, rectification, for economic competitiveness and transformation.
Correct.
Now, The two other reforms, so that's the first one, right?
Yes.
Remove those anti-foreign investment restrictions.
Would that be enough? Let's just say before we go into the other two, would that be enough?
That's enough. So anything that
If you won that, you'd be okay. I could. That's my.
Yeah. So if we won that, that's like the good first step.
Okay.
Right? Now, anything that keeps foreigners out, like even the foreigners are not allowed to practice their professions, take that out. It doesn't need to be in the Constitution. Take that out. Right? So anything that is anti-foreigner, take that out. And we can then do whatever regulations we need in legislation, which can be tweaked or amended more easily
and targeted to certain industries. Yeah,
instead of a blanket ban, right?
That makes so much sense, Orion. That really, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have so far is that welcome sign.
Yeah,
because it really is so. Yeah, I mean, at a cellular level, that's offensive. At a primal level, that's like, So yes, the messaging is so important. You're not even going to get close enough to read the fine print. And that's where all the goodies are in the fine print, which is the reverse.
Exactly.
That's the reverse of every possible. We always lead with the, emotion and basic advertising. Imagine if we advertise products like that. Like, do not buy Coca-Cola. And then we put underneath, Coke adds happiness to your life and all that. But is this a
small fine print?
Would you ever sell a Coca-Cola?
No.
You lead with Coke is happiness, Coke is this, Coke is that, Coke is fun, Coke is life. And then, by the way, you might lose your teeth. By the way, you're probably going to get diabetes.
Yeah. Exactly.
But that's the formula. Why are we trying to rewrite and reinvent the wheel of advertising? I get it now. Okay, how do you think, why federalism? How will this, and Ken, before you even answer, I mean, like, wouldn't this just make it worse for tribalism, feudalism? I mean, we already have these problems with like warlords, but they're under a national government, so they're kept in check.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
So I'll talk to you. I'll talk about first the benefit of having federalism. So we talked about bringing in the foreign direct investors that will create the jobs, right? But we want to make sure that when those jobs start coming in. Can I
just, for a moment, just so I understand, is the federalism to get to the constitutional reform, or these are two separate things?
They're actually separate things.
They're two separate things.
So they all work together.
So you're not pushing for federalism to get the constitutional reform. No. You can get the constitutional reform through our current system.
Well, federalism is a constitutional reform because you need to change certain things in the Constitution.
So FDI and federalism. It's another thing you're fighting for.
Yes.
Okay, so it's not a means to get.
We basically have this 3-point agenda in the correct movement. So the 3-point agenda is openness to foreign direct investors or economic liberalization. We've covered that. And then the second one is federalism or evolving federalism. I actually call it that, evolving federalism. And the third one is the parliamentary system. So we'll get to the parliamentary system later on, right? The first part is creating jobs. The FDI thing, what that does is it solves the unemployment problem. It eventually will also solve the low wage problem because when you have more jobs than there are job seekers, the wages will go up naturally.
It will solve the human capital issue.
Yeah, people will no longer need to go abroad to work, and you'll have a lot of well-trained, forward-thinking Filipinos who spent so many years abroad coming back and then sharing their knowledge with other Filipinos.
And we're only really starting to see the full negative effects of that now in society because we're already into the second generation or third generation of OFWs. With the effect that a parentless
oh my God!
Yeah,
that's the other thing, right?
We're only starting to really see that now.
We see broken families.
Yeah. It's something that, that's the trade-off. We're starting to see the cost.
Absolutely,
of it.
right?
So please go on.
So we want to fix that by making sure that number one, when the jobs come in, all these foreign direct investors, they'll come into the Philippines, but we don't want them all staying in Metro Manila only. What we want to do is to have all these foreign direct investors, these multinational companies, these international investors, global companies, blah, 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 come in. But don't stay stuck in Metro Manila. We want you to go to other parts of the Philippines.
And these people compete.
Yeah, that's where federalism comes in.
Mindanao competes with Visayas or even within Mindanao. Or how does it
work?
Is it
we have, 18 regions, right? Now, what's going to happen is it depends on how the different provinces want to arrange themselves. But I think by default, the best way is through the current regional setup that we have. So you have Ilocos Norte, the Ilocos region, you have the Cagayan Valley region,
Not even divided between Sur and Norte and all that. It's
yeah,
like
so
one Ilocos.
so basically you have the different provinces. Yes, these are this province, and province. So there's Ilocos Norte, Ilocos Sur, La Union, and Pangasinan. They all form one region.
Yeah.
Just region 1, or Ilocos region is what it's called. So what we want is the region to have the ability to set up incentive schemes, that because they currently don't really have that, because everything is really set up from the national
Correct.
level.
Yeah.
We want them to have the ability to set up maybe lower taxes or whatever.
And they just repatriate they pay taxes directly to the federal government. That mean that the Ilocos region would pay a federal tax.
Yes.
And then they silang bahala how they generate that own to pay. Okay.
So we want to grant certain levels of autonomy, particularly on the economic management side. So we want to be able to. That's what the evolving federalism thing is all about. I use the word evolving federalism because I want to emphasize that we're not saying that on this day we are currently where we are right now, and the next day we're automatically all totally decentralized. It's not going to work like that. It's going to be a phased approach. It's going to be a gradual shift, because we don't want to make it so hard for everybody when they cope with the changes. So the changes will have to be done in a gradualist fashion for this. That's why I call it evolving federalism. But the point is, we're going to start off at least with the economic side of things. We first grant the ability to attract investors to the regions, right?
Which will be headed up by a governor, or
and we're going to get there later on, but my point of view is I want to make it similar to Australia or Canada, where the real leader basically is like either a chief minister or like a premier.
Yeah.
And a premier or a chief minister is really nothing but mini prime minister for the region.
Yeah.
So in those other countries, right?
The premier of Victoria, the premier of New South Wales. Yeah.
They are that's the prime minister for that state.
He's the big fish there. Yeah.
He's the prime minister for that state. And then there's a governor, titular governor in Australia for each state, who is actually ceremonial.
Okay.
Right? He's the guy who does all the ribbon cutting and all the formal nice stuff.
Nice cushy job.
But the guy who, so usually in these kinds of situations, we're kind of moving into the parliamentary side already, but then we'll just briefly talk about this part. When you have that kind of scenario, you're able to sort of delineate that maybe senior people, like senior retired, maybe former academics or former famous people, can become these, say, governors, or even like in Singapore, the ceremonial president. See, you basically have like a president who is the head of state, and then the prime minister who's the head of government. He's the guy who actually does all the real heavy lifting, right? And all the hand waving and handshakes and ribbon cutting, that's done by the ceremonial head of state,
King Charles.
Yeah. Anyway, so I was saying the regions, it would be better done in a parliamentary setup, but we'll get there later. The most important part is what we want to do is to have decentralized economic development.
Okay.
And that way, the different regions will now try to bring in as many investors as possible. Come here, guys. We're gonna be,
Texas, Texas is doing this now, and they compete with like California, the Exodus. So okay, go
right. So we want to do it that way, that these regions, these subnational units,
state tax, no state tax,
whatever.
Yeah.
And then so they can do that, and then that's how these regions will be able to develop themselves, so that you don't only have one mega city, which is Manila. You're going to have each region should at least have one, one, right? So people who live in Metro Manila
have options.
They have options. Well, I'm originally from this region. I want to go back. It's like there's a huge boom going on there.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what the main point of federalism really should be. The economic side of
How is it now? I mean, what's the picture now?
Well, right now, it's really everything is based on the national government.
So president dictates policy for these
and
places, or
even Congress, the National Congress, does this. So, I mean, it's if you're a provincial governor, you don't really have much control in terms of how you can. You're limited by
you're
small.
decentralizing basically the power,
Yes,
which
yes.
is so important. I don't think people understand how important it is. You cannot be governed by somebody across from. I mean, how would your local issues be solved with somebody who's so disconnected from it? From a national level, they see things on a completely different thing. They have their own agendas, their own motives, whereas a localized federal system would create this state governance. You know your problems. You know exactly, you're lighter on your feet. You're more specific to the solutions.
Exactly. We want to avoid the whole one size fits all
Yes,
uniformity thing.
correct.
You know,
That's a
like
good one.
everybody has to be the same. No, unity in diversity. Different regions have different concerns. Some are a bit more mountainous, others are more maritime or something like that. Let their policies reflect that.
I think COVID was a great example of what happens when you centralize the power in the response. Like,
Oh my gosh.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, like it was, oh, wear the mask, do this, do that. Yeah, maybe for if you're 75 or 70 and above, but it was no, everyone. I don't care if you're 2 years old or 75 years old.
One size fits
One
all.
size fits all. And look at that. Look what that did to society. So, and that was only a couple of years of it.
Oh my God.
What we're living through is a permanent one size fits all. From Imperial Manila, I will decide what Tuguegarao needs best. I will decide that they need a stop sign on this corner. You know, how the hell would they know that, right?
Exactly.
Leave that to the barangay captain, so to speak.
Exactly.
But we're talking, of course, on a macro level. But your end goal here is to, because the states will know what's best for their own locals because they are there.
Exactly.
And what you're trying to create is this competitiveness, this natural competitiveness between the states so that we can all push forward. It's not just left up to one national government. And, you know,
Exactly.
it's game theory playing out.
Absolutely.
I mean, if Ilocos starts doing well, what's Mindanao's or Davao's excuse?
Exactly. You know what happens basically when you have a federal and decentralized setup like that? People from different regions are going to say, these guys are doing something great. Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes what's going to happen is a lot of people are going to say, well, the jobs are in there. Let's move there. And then, oh no, we're losing voters. We're losing people. We got to shape up. So, I mean, that's kind of the reason why decentralization actually works. You know,
And you're pushing all this from an economic standpoint.
That's a very economic standpoint.
Okay, so it's all of the correct movements. Yeah, but because it's in the name.
It's in the name, right?
So it's all pushing from it. So this is the argument. We're focusing on this, on the economic.
And also we do have the fact that, well, we also want to make sure that we also lessen the ethnic tensions that end up happening. Because like I remember when I was growing up in Cebu from grade 6 all the way to fourth year high school, there was a resentment against Metro Manila.
From the Cebuanos.
From a lot of Cebuanos. I mean, like, it was always like
Imperial Manila.
Yeah, Imperial Manila. Ano sige lang, pirmi na lang Manila, kita di ay. You know, what about us? You know, so there was this resentment that was
because you're right. I mean, it's almost second class.
Yeah.
Almost every other city is deemed second class to Manila. And that's why all the rodents jump into the ship here. It's because this is where all the cheese is, right?
And that's why you also have this mega traffic problem and all the other issues that we're faced with.
Yeah, I've been a very staunch supporter of and advocate of decentralization.
Absolutely.
So I'm glad to have this conversation with you because you're giving depth to my viewpoint. Because I was really thinking just from the traffic point of view.
Yeah.
But now we're tapping deeper into the root cause of it, which is like this will drive the behavior that you want.
Exactly.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is just naturally flow with the natural incentives of people, you know, what given their needs. And you're saying it starts with job opportunities, foreign direct investment. And then the next step is this federalism, which will help to achieve this goal because it will,
spread them out.
Yes, spread them out. And now you're in charge of smaller regions. You know what's right. The next step is parliamentary. How does that play into it and how does this move us forward?
Okay, so the parliamentary system, what it basically does is it creates a more efficient system of governance, a more efficient, more accountable, more flexible, more stable,
less personality based,
more accountable system, less personality based, a system that is much more party platform oriented. The parliamentary systems generally they're less personality oriented than presidential systems, and that's what I have here with this book here with these two books. This one book here talks about the failure of presidential democracy, and this is kind of widely known already that presidential systems are actually lousy.
By
Valenzuela. Yeah, so by Juan Lintz and the late Juan Lintz and Arturo Valenzuela. So this book really talks about the failures, the problems of presidential systems. And then here, parliamentary versus presidential government. This is edited by Arent Leipart. I've actually had a session with him back in 2023, like a Zoom session discussion. It was a really very, very sharp guy. He's a really mega senior already, but still very sharp. And he really talks about why parliamentary systems are actually better than presidential systems.
Okay, I'll play a devil's advocate here because I lived in Australia for many years, and I think one of the criticisms that they had about the parliamentary system was it felt very almost benign already because you had the shadow government always competing with the federal government, which in theory makes perfect sense. So when the federal government in power says we want to do this, it'll always be challenged by the shadow government, right? But that created a lot of we didn't get a lot of things done because that was the blockage. I'm going to object for the sake of objecting. How do we prevent that?
What basically happens when you have a shadow government most of the time is they will usually try to find fault in what what the administration or the government of the day is doing.
Professional fault finding.
Now, they may not necessarily actually
believe that.
They may not necessarily oppose the policies per se.
They're challenging it.
They or even challenge it. They may sometimes say, okay, actually, yeah, it does make sense, but let's look at the finances behind it and all that stuff. Let's see, okay, you guys want to set up this, I don't know, say flood control thing.
Yeah.
But we need to look at the financing behind it. So the shadow government has the ability to do that because when you have, let's say something like a Ministry of Public Works and Highways instead of a department, let's say a Ministry of Public Works and Highways. So there's a
okay, this is very topical now.
It's very topical. We have the minister who handles that, right? Okay. He's from the majority party. He's from the main ruling party. And then the guy from the opposition, he's the shadow minister.
Yes, correct.
For that. Every time they have meetings, that shadow minister has to be there also, right? So the shadow minister is going to be there. They discuss, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to procure these equipment, these supplies from this contractor, and they have all the paperwork. That paperwork also needs to be sent over to the shadow minister.
How do you prevent just opposing for the sake of opposing because you're from the opposite party and I have the right to oppose? How do you prevent the stalemates?
They won't be able to do anything about it. They will raise the question about it, yes, but they won't be able to do it.
Final decision lies with
a majority because they don't have. See, the guys in the opposition, they don't have the majority.
So in a way, it's just sunlight.
It's just sunlight. So what you can do though is to look for faults.
Yeah, and those faults have to stand on their own. You can't just be barking for the sake of
So for example, if you're the shadow minister for defense and there's the minister for defense and then they're talking about procuring F-16s and F-18s and whatever fighter jets and aircraft carriers from the opposition, you can basically look at, wait a minute, I Googled how much it's supposed to cost. Why is this 30 times the cost? Well, I mean, because they're
privy.
Yeah, they're privy to all the what do you call this? The proposed quotations.
We have a sort of system like that. Congress can get involved, but they're not privy from the get-go, correct?
Yeah, they're not. There's no real-time monitoring.
Okay, so right. It's only when there's a problem now.
Once the problem, it's like after the fact.
Congressional hearings, Senate blue ribbons, all that. But
the problem already happened, and that's the only time you're looking at it. Whereas when you're in a parliamentary system,
I can raise that alarm bell before it happens.
Before it even happens, before the actual purchase even happens, you already see. Wait a minute, this is how much it says it's supposed to cost. But wait, an F-16 is only supposed to cost this much. Why is this like 100 times or 30 times the cost. I mean, what's wrong?
And another advantage would be, correct me if I'm wrong, but another advantage would be because those two could always get into cahoots, correct? I mean, theoretically.
Theoretically, they could, right?
Yeah.
But then the leader, so this guy, he's the shadow minister for defense. Right?
Yeah.
And he becomes friends with the minister. For
yeah.
defense. But then the leader of the opposition, right? The main like shadow prime minister, he's going to start saying,
why are you all agreeing with
agreeing with everything he says?
Yeah.
I mean, look, aren't you supposed to be raising an alarm about this? What? Look, everything he says, you're saying yes to. What's going on? So he might even decide to take that guy out.
But the whole party has to decide.
Well, he can decide first, and then the party will end up saying, yeah. We noticed
that's what I'm trying to understand. The checks and balances are one advantage of a parliamentary system is you are not electing Orion Perez Dumdum as the prime minister. You're electing the correct movement party.
Yeah.
You win. All right. So now it's Orion leading it right now because you happen to be the head. But if you start doing stupid shit, we can, as the correct movement party, say, he's midterm, correct?
Midterm, yeah.
Like we've done that. They've done that in the UK several times. Prime Minister of Canada, didn't Trudeau get? Was that what happened with?
That's
Trudeau?
what happened with Trudeau. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what happened with Trudeau. Actually, one thing about Canada is they came up with some reforms that somewhat made it harder to remove the prime minister, because long ago it's like Canada wanted to have a prime minister who could be very much like the president of the US. So the president of the US is kind of secure in his position, right? They wanted to be a bit like the Americans, which I think was a big mistake. So they made it harder for a prime minister of Canada to get removed, and that's kind of why, despite
but he resigned, correct?
He had to, because eventually it just became untenable, all the problems that he caused. But early on, there were already people who really wanted to get rid of him.
But legally, if he hadn't resigned, could they just hold an internal election?
Yeah. They
and then just remove him midterm.
Yes.
No. I'm just for the sake of no impeachments, nothing. It's just loss of confidence is enough.
Yes. You see, the thing about impeachment, and sometimes a lot of Filipinos probably make the mistake of thinking, no, but we have impeachment. Impeachment is the same. No, they're not the same. Impeachment is we impeach a person because he did something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? He committed a crime. He committed an offense. Whereas loss of confidence is, you see, the thing about impeachment, and sometimes a lot of Filipinos probably make the mistake of thinking, no, but we have impeachment. Impeachment is the same. No, they're not the same. Impeachment is we impeach a person because he did something wrong.
Yeah.
Right? He committed a crime. He committed an offense. Yeah. Whereas loss of confidence is
he may do something.
Sometimes it's just that we don't have confidence in his abilities anymore. He's getting senile.
Yeah.
He hasn't done anything wrong yet, but he keeps on making mistakes in his speech, and then it's very embarrassing.
Had it been like that, Biden would have been swapped out.
He would have been swapped out early on. There's actually a very good video of former Prime Minister of Australia, John Howard, making a comment about what happened in the U.S. And he said, Biden's a friend of mine, but, Biden's a friend of mine, but I basically think that, if the U.S. had a parliamentary system, then, people would have basically tapped on his shoulder and said, mate, it's time to go.
I gotta give you props for the Australian accent. You know what, Orion? That is one of the hardest accents to do because it's so caricaturized. Is that the word?
Totally bargain, mate.
Yeah, mate. I mean, because there's this idea of an Australian accent which is normally just sounds nothing like it. That's the original. That's the Australian, the bargain. Yeah,
bargain accent.
A good Johnny Howard impersonation. Wow. That has really opened up my mind a lot because I lived through both. But I was never, I was 14, 15, 16 in Australia. Couldn't care less about politics. But now that you're showing it, you're explaining it to me in this way, and we're putting that framework over our problems in the Philippines, I can see how this solution really makes sense because power is just too concentrated in ideology, like you said, personality based. Oh my God, emotions. It's all emotion. Like you just mentioned with Pinoy, we don't want to hurt his feelings. So
Oh my God,
110
yeah.
million of us have to go, ay, wag sana, unless prescribed by law po, let's grow up.
It's kind of like tiptoeing around the problem because we don't want to offend him. So no, dude, let's get rid of those. Get rid of those anti-foreign direct investment restrictions. I mean, that's really the sad thing about the whole thing because I mean this book, Why Nations Fail.
That's a beautiful book, by the
This
way.
this book really talks about what makes a country more successful and what makes another country that may be similar a failure. And it's not about the people, kasi tamad sila, oh, these people are bobo sila. No, that's not it.
But that's what we always say, right?
That's what a lot of people say, right? Oh, kasi yung mga tao, mga Pilipino, mga tamad. No, that's not what it is. Why is it when we're abroad, we
Yes.
do a really, really great job, right? So this book basically says, no, it's actually the systems. The way they term it, they don't use the word systems. They say it's the institutions of the society. So there are all these examples of the exact same like cultural background of people. There's this place called Nogales in Arizona, which is it's just a town which is it is divided by the U.S. Mexico border, right? So one part, the northern part, is in the U.S. The southern part is in Mexico. It's got the exact same name, exact same people, ethnicity, and all that stuff. But obviously,
There's an imaginary line.
there's that imaginary line. But then
Different
the people
yeah.
from the south obviously are not doing that well in terms of economics and standard of living, whereas those living up north have a better quality of life. And what's the difference? The institutions. And again, and even before I read this book, I already had that same kind of insight because every time people would ask a question, no, it's the people, it's not the system. Yes, it is the system. Look, North Korea,
I
South
was just
Korea.
gonna say that's
Yeah.
that's the best example I can think.
North Korea, South Korea, same people,
People.
same ethnicity, etc., same culture, blah blah blah. But wait,
A magical line.
magical line causes the difference in
No, yeah.
outcomes, right?
Come on.
Same thing, West Germany and East Germany, the same thing as well. So very clearly, it's the kinds of systems that were in place that caused these divergences in terms of outcome. Diba?
Okay, if we move to that, but wouldn't the NCR still have all the advantages because we're Imperial Manila, so we'll have the money, we'll have the opportunities. So the foreign investment will just come here.
When Metro Manila does become a region, it will not be a normal region like all these other regions are going to be. It will be considered a national capital territory. And as a territory, it will actually, the mandate of Metro Manila is not to compete with the rest. You will be subsidizing the rest of those, the poor regions who are not doing well, because for way too many decades, by default, you guys were doing great.
That's what Australia has, is the Australian Capital Territory,
exactly.
ACT.
Exactly.
So you're similar to, let's put it into business language. If you have a master distributor, franchise or distributor, you can't, you
cannot compete against.
No, if you're Toyota and you come in here and you say, okay, we're Toyota, but then I want this dealership, that dealership, this year. Well, why would anyone want to be a dealer of yours?
Exactly.
They'd be like, well, you got all the best hanging, all the most profitable and all.
Exactly.
There's nothing in it for us. So it's not in your best interest as the master distributor or franchisor. You have to give the opportunity. You have to divvy it up. So you're saying a territory would solve that problem.
Yeah, turning it into a territory whose main mandate is to just serve as, yes, you're going to serve as a capital, and then you're basically going to be the cash cow of the national government to help out those regions that are currently suffering because of ages upon ages of you guys getting everything. So
is that what DC is? What's DC?
In a way, DC is kind of
district,
like that as well.
Right?
So yeah, they're just really a capital city. That's what they are.
They have those that same framework.
They're very much like that. They're not out to get business from all the other.
Yeah, because they don't. I mean,
right.
So many other states have better locators and stuff like that.
This is my take. So Metro Manila, NCR, will become a national, like a federal capital territory, which will now be under let's say a chief minister, right? And this solves a lot of the problems. I mean, the kind of gridlock you have between all the different LGUs that can't agree on stuff, because MMDA really doesn't have much power.
No, they are
They
the
don't.
toothless tiger.
They really are a toothless tiger, right? So what happens is we need to have a system similar to what they have in Tokyo, for example, the Tokyo metropolitan region, metropolitan Tokyo government. They're like a prefecture, right? And they have their own governor there. In this case, it's going to be, they're going to have basically have a government that really handles the whole thing.
Speaking of which, we had a Metro Manila governor before.
That's why it was actually better. It was Imelda back then.
Right? And we had Mathay, I think Imelda. Imelda was the first, I think.
Sure. I don't know all the details. I remember it's
but definitely Imelda, I think, was the first governor of the.
It was the first, yeah. And that's why it was somewhat easier to get things done back then, right? Because you didn't have to ask all these guys for permission for, we want to do some flood control projects. Are you okay with it? No. This is what we need to do for everybody's sake, right? So we need that we need a system like that. But more importantly, when I was saying it's not going to compete against the others, the mandate is as much as possible to try to depopulate. I would say there should be a mandate to depopulate Metro Manila so that it becomes a premier city. It becomes a premier city without all the people living in these slums anymore and all that stuff. People, I mean, look, flooding. The flooding problem was caused by everybody from all around the country moving into Metro Manila because all the jobs were there. And a lot of these people, because there was no public housing and there's not enough places for them to live, they ended up living in places that were back in the Spanish era and the American era. They were told, you should not be living in these places. These are flood zones. Don't live there. Don't build there. But then people have no choice. Oh, I mean, I need to live somewhere. Oh, this place is cheap because it is a flood zone, so it's cheap. So we'll live there. And that's what happened. You have a lot of places that are built on flood zones because of necessity.
Yeah.
So if we actually have a system where we end up by mandate depopulating the place, we could actually end up recreating through urban renewal Metro Manila to become a very beautiful capital city. Showpiece. So,
but not necessarily the seat of business, commerce, trade, etc.
Not necessarily.
Just because, but right now it is.
No, right now it is.
And we're trying to make it a showpiece at the same time, but it's full of it can't be both.
It can't be both. Maybe it can become a place where the more high value stuff is, like, I don't know, financial markets maybe are going to be done in Metro Manila. Yeah, something like New York in that sense. But then a lot of the industrialization is going to be spread out to other places.
I mean, because that's you have New York, which is probably the financial capital, and then you have LA and California, which has its entertainment and all the other. They have agriculture and other things there. Then you have like place like Texas now, which is becoming huge for courting capital because of their low tax rates. So you see it working to a degree now in America. If we were to bring that system in here, we could create the jobs that we so desperately need, and we'd be solving that problem. And your argument, which I see so clearly now, that just cascades all the way down.
Absolutely.
It's exactly how I feel about money. And, if we could just get sound money, we would then build on top of that, because anything you build on a corrupt system, the trajectory is going to go there. And this is our foundation. The Constitution is the foundation for the entire Philippines.
Totally. I mean, it's really sad because, I mean, like when talking about federalism, there were a lot of people who would come up with all kinds of fake news, like what you were saying earlier about, isn't that going to make dynasties and warlords worse and all that stuff?
Or we can never get rid of them.
Yeah.
I mean, there would be no term limits, right?
So let's talk about the warlords and dynasties thing. So I would basically say that's totally fake news. I mean, it was invented by a lot of these naysayers and pundits who don't know any better. I'm not going to say it's because they're evil. I'm going to basically use Hanlon's razor. So Hanlon's razor is this this guidepost, which basically says, rather than thinking that people do things because they're evil or they have selfish interest, it's probably easier. It may be, in fact, better to just think that they're doing it because they're stupid or ignorant or they don't know.
I heard another saying last night that reflects that. Don't always put intentions into other people's mistakes.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that really
Exactly.
sunk hard.
Yeah.
It's like
That's called Hanlon's razor. So all these
different
people,
to Occam's, of course.
so yeah, Occam's razor is like the easiest explanation is
probably
most probably the most correct one,
Yeah.
right? This one is, don't ascribe to malice
Yeah.
what could be more easily explained through
by stupidity or ignorance.
yeah.
Wow.
Because I think really a lot of these people who are going against federalism and creating all these fake news items and stuff that get spread out in mass media, they just don't know any better.
Okay, so speaking of with those bad press, fake news, etc., why do they say that corruption would probably be more prone in the parliamentary versus presidential?
So they don't know any better, right? First of all, with the parliamentary system, it's actually shown in so many studies. There's one study by these economists. There's this bunch of economists, three of them, Dr. Norman Loaiza, Dr. Daniel Lederman, and Dr. Rodrigo Soares. So Brazilian, I think he's Brazilian. And so these three guys, they did all this number crunching, and they found out that countries that use parliamentary systems are less prone to corruption than countries that use presidential systems. The same thing, another group of people from Boston University, Dr. Stromthacker and Dr. John Gehring, they came up with a separate, totally independent study, which also reached the same conclusions that, yes, indeed, countries that use parliamentary systems are less prone to corruption than countries that use presidential systems.
For the reason being
that there are more eyes watching.
Makes sense.
There are more eyes watching. So the fact that you have a shadow government, shadow ministers, shadow cabinet watching, shadow cabinet watching over every single move of the main cabinet shows that they can't escape, because every single purchasing order, every single quotation is real-time monitored by the opposition. And the guys from the opposition, they have this inherent incentive to find fault, because if they don't find fault, how are they going to compete against these guys? They have to find issues that they did. That's their job, right?
To just could you imagine taking that a step further and then putting all of those expenditures and stuff onto a blockchain? How wonderful that would be, the transparency.
Oh, absolutely.
An immutable blockchain where we could see where the money was spent, how much is coming in, how much is going out. That would be just incredible.
Absolutely.
Didn't we have something, didn't President Marcos have something in the 73 Constitution that was a parliamentary system? Or
so on paper, the 1973 Constitution basically stipulated having a parliamentary system.
What happened?
But unfortunately, we didn't have one in actual practice. So on paper, that's what we had, a parliamentary system on paper, but we actually couldn't have one in real practice because a few months before the ratification of the 1973 Constitution, we had martial law.
Oh.
So martial law preempted. You see, what happened was, so Marcos Sr. set up martial law in September. I think it was September 11, September 11 of 1972, right? If I'm not mistaken, it was in early 1973. It was either January or February. I think it was in January of 1973. A few months after martial law was implemented or was set up, that the 1973 Constitution was ratified. So the problem was martial law already gave all the powers to the president. It gave the powers to the president, and it in fact ended up dissolving Congress. Now, when the 1973 Constitution was set up to be a parliamentary system requires you to have a parliament. How can you have a parliament when you don't even have a legislature to begin with, because it was dissolved in 1972?
And it was not lifted, right? Martial law
It was lifted in 1981.
Like officially lifted.
It was officially lifted in 1981, but
So that's 10 years almost.
yeah, that was
So, but we were operating, there was a period where we were operating in a quasi sort of like, it's there just in case, but we weren't anymore. Because I remember growing up in the 80s, we weren't being caned or anything.
Yeah, we weren't even being caned.
But yes, it was still technically there.
So we had martial law. And because of martial law, we could not have a real parliamentary system in place because we didn't even have a legislature until we had the interim batasan. But the problem was, even then, Marcos Sr. was both president and titular prime minister at the same time. And in a real parliamentary system, you can't have that.
Yeah.
So we never really had a parliamentary system because, like in 1981, when Marcos Sr. decided to lift martial law,
wouldn't he
he also had amendments made to the 1973 Constitution, which turned it back into a presidential system.
That answers the question. Okay, because I was saying once it lifted, wouldn't it just go back?
That's what it was supposed to happen, right?
But he put amendments in to protect.
So we ended up with what looked like a parliamentary system. So there was a president and there was a prime minister, but who had the power? It was not Cesar Virata. So Cesar Virata was the titular prime minister in 1981. Like basically after the amendments were made, we ended up with a prime minister. But the prime minister, Cesar Virata, was technically more like an executive secretary who was given a fancier title. So that's what basically happened. And who's the real decision maker? It was Marcos Sr. In a real parliamentary system, like in Singapore, where you have a president who is ceremonial and a prime minister who's the real decision maker, the person who really goes abroad for, let's say you have an APEC meeting or an ASEAN meeting, who attends? Is it the president or the prime minister? It would be the prime minister in a real parliamentary system. But during that time, every time there was a summit, it was President Marcos who went, not Virata. The person who was joining the meetings and speaking on behalf of the Philippines was not the prime minister. It was the president. So in reality, we always had a presidential system, even though the original 1973 Constitution was supposed to be parliamentary. Because during that 9-year period, a 9-year period, we had martial law. And then afterwards, when martial law was lifted, we changed back into what we would call a French-style, strong president, semi-presidential system.
After listening to you for, I think it's been about 2 hours now, I can understand now why you're so angry.
Yeah, man.
I could see every time I see on PGMN, you're yelling at the camera, and I'm like, why is he always upset? Now that I feel like I want to yell at the camera too, because it does seem like the solution is pretty much staring us in the face. And there's just either this false pride, there's these silly things, this ignorance, or God knows what it is, but they're not legitimate reasons that we're just stopping this progress.
I know.
So my question to you is, what needs to be done? How close are you to getting this to the right desk to be? Is it signed or is it a vote among Congress? What happens here to get to the next step?
I think more than anything else, I think we just need to, like what we're doing right now, when a lot of people get to watch this and they spread it out, more people will get enlightened. They'll get more educated about the topic. They'll realize, oh, it's not so bad after all, right? They're going to realize, wait a minute, it's not about term extensions. It's about fixing the economy. So, I mean, the whole thing about term extensions, people say, that's term extensions. Wait. In a parliamentary system, for example, yes, it's true that if you're a good prime minister, first of all, you have to be a good prime minister.
And that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. If you have to be a good prime minister, and then that's the only time you can get reelected and reelected and reelected. But the moment you make a mistake, even though you're on your second year or sometimes your first year, you can get thrown out if you make some major boo-boos, right? It's like
the UK prime minister before Keir Starmer, was it that woman?
Rishi Sunak.
No, was there one in between?
There was one in between. So
was it a girl, woman?
Yeah. So there was she only had 45 days.
45 days. There you go. That's exactly the proof we're talking about.
That was Liz Truss.
They lost trust in Liz Truss. But that was a situation of, Was it loss of confidence? I
it's-
forget.
I would say Liz Truss was more like a
Transitional?
just a transitional.
But it still proves the point that you can do this.
Yes.
You can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess I'm trying to alleviate the fears of people who might feel that yes, we're backing down this system where we can keep somebody forever. No, it's quite the opposite.
It's easier to get rid of them.
It's far easier to get rid of no impeachments, no congressional hearings, nothing. It's just
you don't need these people to have committed a crime or done something wrong. It's just if they don't have if most people don't have confidence in this person, that's going to reflect.
It's probably harder to fire an employee
exactly
than it is to change a prime minister.
Oh, yeah.
In the system we're talking about.
Indeed.
And that's what we basically want. We do not want to have the seat of power like crystallized, like it is now.
Yeah.
It's
you
almost,
don't want it to get metastasized.
Metastasized, that's a better word. Yeah. Because that's really what's going on now. So we want options. This seems to provide the options that we need. It seems to provide the checks and balances that we need and we want. And I think, that could be a potential biggest solution that we could have.
Definitely.
Constitutional reform for the economic growth, allowing FDI. I'm just recapping here just to see if I understand it correctly. And please stop me if I misunderstood anything. But it's the basic messaging here is to constitutional reform for a better economic transition by allowing foreign direct investment, which would increase the jobs, would increase the opportunities. And then we want to decentralize out of Metro Manila.
Mm-hmm.
And the way we are going to do that, the best vehicle to take us there is through federalism or federalism, because that would put the power back into the hands of local governments, create the game theory that we need to compete with one another. So it's not just Manila. Manila would become the seat of power, perhaps just by default, maybe financial, maybe political, but it wouldn't compete because its mandate would be to
depopulate itself.
Depopulate itself.
Yeah.
So literally, it would be to
spread things out,
spread the power, spread everything out.
Yeah.
And then the final step there is the parliamentary system, which would provide the checks and balances we need.
Indeed.
And it would take away these dynasties, these feuds, these warlords, all of these fears that we have, because it would put sunlight. It would create.
Absolutely.
Did I get it?
Yes, you totally got that. I wanted to add.
Were you recording?
Yeah.
Huh? Jardine? Sure, huh?
I wanted to also add this part. So about there's just the fake news about warlords and dynasties. My immediate rebuttal to that is, what, federalism causes warlords and dynasties? Wait a minute. Why is it that in Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Germany, Malaysia, Switzerland, all of these countries use federalism? Wait a minute. Where are the warlords and dynasties you're talking about? Right? So these countries that are using federalism, they don't have these warlords and dynasties. The Philippines, on the other hand, we are not even federal. We are using a unitary structure. We're extremely centralized. We're not federal at all. And yet we have so many warlords and dynasties. What's the problem? Obviously, it's not federalism.
Mhm.
It's feudalism.
Wow.
So, and then I said, so these people who were going against constitutional reforms, I'm sorry to say, I'm going to have to name them. The Munsod couple, basically, Christian
Really?
Munsod. Yeah, they
And Willie?
see Maring Winnie and
Really?
Maring Winnie and her husband.
She normally
Christian.
makes so much sense.
She normally does, but
yeah.
but not in this particular topic.
What's her pushback? What's her
So
argument?
they're the ones who spread this out on mainstream media, claiming that warlords, federalism will worsen warlords and dynasties.
Do you think that's coming from ignorance, or
I'd say it's coming from ignorance. It's coming
not necessarily a vested interest in the outcome?
A lot of people say that, but I'm going to use Hanlon's law, Hanlon's razor, and say maybe it's very clear that they just don't understand how federalism works. Very obviously, there's a huge amount of ignorance and lack of information, lack of knowledge on the topic that causes them to go against what they don't understand. So, I mean, so like I said, right? These countries that are using federalism, they don't have those warlords and dynasties, whereas we have them, and so therefore, it's not. We have them even though we don't have federalism.
So we're stopping it because we want to prevent something that's actually happening right now.
It's actually happening right now. Yes, indeed.
We have no data to support the fact that it's going to happen with federalism.
Exactly.
But the fear of changing to that is to prevent what's already happening right now.
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
You see, what they didn't really understand is the proliferation of warlords and dynasties is actually a function of our lousy economic system, because that's what causes feudalism to happen. You know, you end up having feudalism when you have very limited economic opportunities, when so many people are so poor, extremely poor, that they have to rely on handouts from the elites in their little communities. And those elites, right? What do they do now? So, okay, so I'm the one giving you all this assistance. In return, vote for us in the next elections. So that's what happens, right? But if everybody had a lot of jobs, if everybody had all these good, decent paying jobs, people would actually not be asking for ayuda or asking for largesse and asking for doleouts all the time. They wouldn't. In fact, you know, if a local politician handed out an envelope to someone who actually has a good job, and then when he checks it out, probably thinks it's something else. But money, what do you take me for?
Yeah.
Ano sa akin, pulubi?
Yeah.
I mean, like usually you have a higher level of pride
Yeah.
and integrity when you earn a good salary.
When you created the environment for you, when you're starving, when you're desperate, when the game is rigged.
Please, sir.
Yes.
tulong na lang, you know?
Yes.
So everybody becomes like that, right?
It's exact same problem I have with money. Is the parallels are so incredibly similar, because it's the same thing with inflation. You know, when you know that, you know, the game's rigged and the inflation comes from the overprinting, that item that you want now is going to cost more in the future. So your time horizons are different. You're going to spend because you fear that it's just going to get out of your reach later on, versus sound money that's going to go down next year, and the year after keep going down. And yes, everything changes because you're not as desperate. You're not making these crazy bets because you know that you can perform delayed gratification.
Exactly.
It actually works to your advantage because you're working on a sound money principle. But when you're working with some people play by this rules and we have to play by this rules, one man can print what the other man has to earn. This is where the chaos all happens. It's all upside down now.
Absolutely.
Then you have what we call the cantillionaires. I was a new term. Have you heard that term?
No, I haven't heard that.
A cantillionaire is the cantillion effect. Whoever's closest to the source gains the most. Well, that's the money printer. So if you are close to the money printer, you get cheap debt. You can borrow at 1% or 2%, and you don't have to be a genius to turn that into 5 or 6 or 7% and collect the arbitrage.
That's why everything is actually centered around Metro Manila, because this is where the
printer is.
This is where the printer is.
So the cantillionaires are the people close to the printer that will never go down to the public, because they're the ones that, as soon as it ends up with them, the contracts, the DPWH contracts, the cheap interest rates, whatever it is. So boom, it stops there, and they call them cantillionaires because of the cantillion effect. And that's a new term.
Oh my gosh. You know, one thing I wanted to add was there was also another set of like fake news that was going around a lot. So during, you know, in the previous term, there was a lot of talk about moving towards federalism, right? And there were people saying, no, federalism is going to make taxes get higher because you're going to have all these different layers of tax. Wait. Not true. So when we compare, for example, the unitary Philippines against federal Malaysia, Malaysia's tax scheme is much lower than ours. We're actually, for the longest time, we've been one of the most taxed in this part of the world. We actually very, very, very high taxes here. Whereas in Malaysia, which is federal, they have lower taxes. And you know, I'll give another example.
Hong Kong's got, well, what's Hong Kong's system?
Well, Hong Kong says that they're a sub-state.
It's a very strange.
They have a strange system, but it still
shows that low taxes can work.
Low taxes can work, right? And then I'm going to give another example of federal versus non-federal country. Netherlands versus Germany. So I saw this with my own eyes. So back in 2019, I visited. I was working for Philips back then, and it's a Dutch company, right? And so one weekend I met up with a friend of mine who's also from the Correct Movement, and he lives in Kerkrade, which is on the border with Germany, right? And so what happened was, this friend of mine, he does his shopping just across the border, which is like there's a street there, which you just cross it, you're already in Germany,
Wow.
right? So he does his shopping there because it's cheaper, because the taxes are cheaper, the taxes are lower in federal Germany compared to unitary Netherlands. And it's the same thing. Switzerland versus Sweden. Sweden is unitary, Switzerland is federal. The taxes in federal Switzerland are also much lower than in unitary Sweden. So I mean, all this fake news about if we have federalism, it will cost more taxes, higher taxes than the normal. No, not true. We have all these absolute examples that prove them wrong. So I mean, it's just sad because so much fake news has been spread out by people who don't know any better. It's really sad, honestly, bro.
Well, I don't know if we're going to solve the entire problem today, but I can say that I've learned a tremendous amount from you, Ryan, today. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you want to add to this that's crucial that we might have missed?
Well, I think the main thing I wanted to add really is people need to learn about these things that they probably don't understand. I mean,
It's not sexy.
It's not sexy, but
It's necessary.
It's necessary. It's a first enabling step. I mean, we in the correct movement, we don't even claim that this is a magic bullet or a silver bullet or a magic pill. It's none of that. It's not like if we do these reforms, everything will automatically, instantaneously become better. No. But it's a first enabling step that will make it way, way, way easier for us.
At least put us on that correct trajectory.
Yeah.
Yes.
Put us on the correct trajectory to fix a lot of the other problems that we have moving forward. Because right now, things like the flooding issue, for example, or so many stuff that we need to fix, we're not able to fix using the system that we have. The presidential system that we have is very short-term oriented. We have the 3-year midterms.
Mhm.
We have the 6-year only six years only term,
yeah.
single term, which, by the way, a lot of people think we have an American style system.
No.
Under the hood, we have a Mexican system.
Yeah.
Because in Mexico, what they have is basically the exact same system where you only have a single 6-year term for the president, and then the senators are voted 6 years, and then they have
Midterm.
they can do 12 years straight. And then it's the same thing with the people in the lower house. 3 years, 3 years. Here, it's 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. In Mexico, it's 3 years, 3 years, and then you stop before you have to do that again. So we actually have a very Mexican style system. It's not American. It's very Mexican, and that's why we have very Mexican style results. Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really sad because so many people are going against what they just don't understand. It's sad because these are enabling solutions that would have, for example, if we had a parliamentary system, it would have caused us to have greater ability to do long-term planning.
Mm-hmm.
Largely because if you're a good party and the leader of that party is good, that leader and that party can continue on. Like in the case of Singapore, they have the
But there's a
People's Action
consensus.
Party.
It's not a dynasty.
It's not a dynasty.
It's yes, for as long as you're doing a great job, we want you there. That's the minute that you don't,
you can get thrown out.
absolutely.
Right?
I can't think of a better system than that.
Absolutely. So I mean, the stuff that we have, right? We can't do the long-term planning to fix all these flood control thingies because it's all short-term.
We also have to think like how the foreigners would think, the foreign investors would think. It's like the Philippines could have all the beautiful things that we talk about, the beaches, the islands, the people, and all that, but they're looking at the constitution. They're looking at the ease of doing business. They're looking
Exactly.
at the stability of the political system, and we fail there.
We totally fail there. A lot of people say we have a problem of corruption, but yeah, fine, there is corruption, but it's not the root cause.
Because there's corruption in America, there's
corruption
corruption
everywhere.
in Australia, there's corruption everywhere.
There's corruption everywhere. Corruption is not actually
Maybe
the root
not
cause.
Bhutan. That's probably the only place I'll probably say doesn't have it.
Corruption is really more like a symptom of certain quirks in the system that are making it hard for people to do the right thing. Because like you need to have a system that makes it easier for people to do the right thing, because when it becomes harder for them to do the normal right thing, they'll be forced for their own survival to try to do what is illegal, because that's what puts food on the table.
And if they see that somebody else with the game's rigged, again, they will have to do their own compensation for that.
Exactly.
Because the game is rigged.
Exactly.
It is rigged.
Exactly.
Completely.
You know, a lot of people don't understand that when we improve the economy, actually, corruption actually naturally gets lower. For example, if we opened up to foreign direct investors, like remove those how do you say this, those restrictions, suddenly DTI, BOI, SEC, they'll get flooded with so many inquiries coming from foreign companies, right? And when that happens, you know, whatever form of little corruption that happens in, I'm not saying those groups are, but there's always this problem of people being gatekeepers.
Yeah.
Now, if there's very few companies coming into the Philippines,
Yes.
like only 5 companies coming in a year, 5 big companies coming in a year, they're gonna say, "Oh, I might as well make money on the few 5. Those 5 guys, I'm gonna really ask them. You have to pay this huge amount, 100, like I don't know, 100,000 to for me to sign this paper." But if you have, instead of just 5 companies, you have, I don't know, 5,000 companies coming in a year. Even if you're a corrupt guy, you're going to basically spread it out. There's 5,000 of them anyway.
Yeah.
I might as well just ask for 10 pesos na lang, you know, or 20 pesos na lang for each guy.
Yeah.
So instead of asking one time, big time, you know, this, give me a 10 million in this deal.
Yeah, you can gatekeep if there's only a handful of people walking through, but if there's some whole mob walking of companies, you can't. You just like the patching the dam.
Exactly. And even if you're corrupt, you're gonna probably lower the per unit cost.
Economies of scale.
And economies of scale. And so what happens eventually is that also goes away, because there's so many companies coming in. They're all gonna pay taxes. They're all gonna spend money inside the economy, which means more tax revenue for the country. The country can now start paying higher wages to all these little minor functionaries and government officials and all that stuff. There's no need for people to be corrupt when they start earning better salaries.
Yeah.
So we need to make this first enabling step first. Stop this whole, no, it's not going to work because there's corruption. Wait. Corruption is really just a symptom, you know?
And it's, I mean, to put it in the car terms, because this is where my world is, it's like, stop changing the tires. If the alignment is off, fix the alignment first, because you're just going to keep changing those tires.
Exactly.
They're just going to keep having uneven wear and whatever. Get to the alignment, solve that problem, and then you will have, yes, it's not that your car won't have other problems, but at least you won't have unnecessary problems, like the uneven, premature wear of your tires because of an alignment issue. Stop changing the tires. Look at the alignment.
Absolutely. It's just really great that you mentioned this whole thing about car analogy, because I use that a lot myself. Because like when people ask me, why do you have these 3 reforms? And I say, because they hit 3 different aspects of our society. So like bringing in the foreign direct investors, that actually is a form, that's kind of like the engine. So you're fixing the engine because that's what drives you forward, right? But then federalism, that's probably like, I don't know,
steering.
No, parliamentary is the steering.
Okay.
So maybe it's probably more like federalism is probably more like the suspension system. So it, you know, keeps everything more stable and all that.
That works,
you know? So it because it basically allows us to redistribute.
Yes, and absorb the
right?
I get you.
And then the steering part is because you're steering the direction. That's parliamentary. It's a better steering mechanism than what we're currently having. Which, I mean, the system that we have is just so clunky, and it's
like having a drunk behind the wheel.
Absolutely. And it's not only just the car; it's also kind of like the selection criteria for who can be a driver, because when you have a parliamentary system, automatically the quality of your leadership actually improves, because instead of just relying on who is popular, who has name recall, you need to have people who are good leaders within their party
Consistently,
consistently.
not just, yeah, I won, haha, 6 years, stuck with me.
Exactly. You know, and this is one thing I noticed as well when over the so many years that we've been doing all this research. We started off in 2010. Um, I did certain things like I looked at GDP per capita. So all these, the listing of all these countries, GDP based on GDP per capita. So when I did I looked at the top 30 countries based on GDP per capita versus the bottom 30 countries based on GDP per capita. And I saw that the majority of those top 30 were parliamentary systems.
Wow.
And then when you look at the bottom 30, the majority are presidential or even semi-presidential. It's very clear. And then you move on to another index, for example, Human Development Index. It's the same. You look at Ease of Doing Business Index. Same thing again, top 30 versus bottom 30. Look at corruption, Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index. Top 30 least corrupt countries in the world, mostly parliamentary. Bottom, most corrupt countries in the world, presidential or even semi-presidential. It's like the patterns are so clear. They're so clear that, and I'm just wondering why is it that people in the Philippines are still so, charter change, masama yan, term extension na naman yan.
So we're getting our news from. I think it's sad. It's where we get our news from, and
it's sad.
Yeah, it's really sad. But steps like this, very important. I really appreciate your time explaining it to me like a 5-year-old. I really learned a lot, and I hope everyone out there learned a lot too. We appreciate that. Not the sexiest of all topics, I guess. There are so many other distractions out there, but it's necessary. Sometimes you got to eat the nutritionally balanced information, right?
Absolutely.
It's dense. It's not covered in sugar, but it's going to sustain you. And this is the kind of conversations we need to have to be able to push our country forward, because we're discussing solutions rather than discussing problems. And that's very rare. So Orion Perez Dumdum, thank you so much for the education.
Thanks for being such a great sparring partner here.
I came really with an open mind and open heart, and I'm glad I did, because the goal was to learn, and I learned so much. And I just really hope that came across today for our viewers.
Yeah, I mean, being a car guy, I hope this last analogy sort of helps everyone. And I hope this is something you can also use in your own other interviews with other people. That we are like a car that wants to go full on, really 150 kph. Sorry, we want to go really fast, but we have the handbrake on.
Yeah.
So you have to release the handbrake so you can zoom up, and we're being held back by a lot of stuff that's not working.
Yeah.
Right. So
and for no actual good reason. Yeah. That's the part that frustrates me the most. I've been digging in and trying to find where that resistance is, and if there's any value to it. I mean, I can't see it. It's really stems from ignorance and the fear of something new, maybe.
Yeah, lack of knowledge. Yeah, fear of something new. That's really what it is. It's just sad.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's evil intentions, selfish intentions. I mean, what they need to understand is all these, like even the oligarchs, for example, when all these reforms happen, it'll be better for them as well. There'll be more people with money buying their goods and services and the products that they sell.
But to a certain degree, you can't really,
right?
I guess you can't really blame them, because the trust issues that we have, we've been promised so many things, and it always usually ends up in the same place. But this is radical reform. This is not just little band-aids that we're promising. This is not little optical solutions. This is foundational, or in your case, constitutional. So we've never tried this. So that's to our favor. If you're lacking confidence in it, we've never tried anything at this level. We're always there just picking at the scabs and putting that new band-aid on and going, ay, wala pa.
Yeah. Hopefully, people learn from this.
They will. They will.